Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the scientific base of perception of breathing. You know, meditation on breathing is very well known practice of meditation, and it is also practiced in all different traditions of yoga and meditation. To appreciate significance of total breathing, it is essential to understand the spatial importance of breathing on the basis of scientifically established facts. We know that breathing is concerned with respiratory system, so we should learn how respiration goes on. The body needs a continual supply of oxygen. One may survive for a long time without food, for the less than a week without water, but one would not last more than a few minutes without oxygen. In addition, for a continual supply of oxygen, the body also needs some means of disposing of the waste carbon dioxide produced by the function of the body's cells. Breathing or respiration provides a continual replenishment of the oxygen in the lungs, drawing in fresh air and expelling waste gases. There are certain organs which are working in the respiratory system. The respiratory system includes passageways and tubes through which the air passes. The nose, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles arranged in a sequence that branches and rebranches and looks like an inverted tree. The tubes and the tiny air sacs called alveoli in which the exchange of the gases takes place. The bronchioles and alveoli constitute the lungs. The system includes a bellows constitute the lungs, bellows arrangement, the rib cage operated by muscles and controlled by nerves. The nose is the gateway to the respiratory tract. It filters, warms, moistens the incoming air. The interior of the nasal cavity is lined with mucous membranes. Dust and other fine particles and bacteria are caught in the sticky mucus. The mucous membranes also help to moisten the incoming air. Another important organ of the respiratory system is the trachea. The trachea or windpipe lies in front of the esophagus. It divides into two bronchi, one leading into each lung. The trachea with its two branches, the bronchi and their numerous branches, the bronchial tubes and bronchioles, looks very much like an inverted tree. Each tiny bronchiole terminates in a cluster of minute air sacs, the alveoli, which look like a miniature bunch of grapes. Human lungs contain about 300 million alveoli, covering a total surface area of more than 90 square meters, enough to carpet a tennis court. This enormous surface area provides for an efficient exchange of gases. The two lungs are cone-shaped with the base resting on the diaphragm and the apex into the root of the neck. They are freely movable except at the roots. Their internal structure is a mass of branching tubes and air sacs. The alveoli has an extremely thin wall and is surrounded by a network of equally thin-walled capillaries. Gases diffuse back and forth between the alveoli and capillaries network, and the actual exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs here. Now we would see the main function of respiratory system is breathing. Respiration is the physical act of breathing. in which air is alternatively drawn into the lungs and expelled from them. Mostly, this is an unconscious act that goes on throughout the day and even when one is asleep. Breathing includes two phases: inspiration or breathing in and expiration or breathing out. When the pressure inside is greater than the pressure of the atmosphere, air is expelled from the lungs. When the outside pressure is greater than the inside, the air flows in. The mechanical power required for the process of breathing is supplied by the action of three sets of muscles. Among them, the first is diaphragm, the second is the intercostal muscles, and the third is clavicular muscles. The important mechanism for increasing the volume of the chest cavity is the contraction of the diaphragm. This sheet-like muscle separates the chest from the abdomen. It forms the floor of the chest cavity. It has a dome shape when it is relaxed. When it contracts, it flattens out and descends, expanding the chest. The circumference of the chest cavity is increased by another mechanism, the contraction of the intercostal muscles, which makes the ribs swing upward and outward, expanding the chest cavity. The expansion of the chest cavity automatically inflates the lungs. The third mechanism for breathing is operated by the collarbone. Diaphragmatic breathing is slow and deep. Coastal breathing is rapid and shallow. The maximum amount of air that the lungs can hold is about 6 liters. We are not using that capacity of lungs in our day-to-day breathing process. In a forceful expiration, one can expel about 5 liters in one blow. In normal, quiet breathing, the volume of air that flows into and out of the lungs with each breath is about half liter. The volumes and capacities can be modified by breathing exercises and by practicing scientific total breathing. Now, during breathing process, what happens? There is exchange of gases. The air we breathe into our lungs contains about 21% oxygen and about 79% nitrogen. The air we breathe out contains 15% oxygen and 5% carbon dioxide and 79% nitrogen. An exchange of the two gases occurs in the lungs. Oxygen passes out through the thin walls of the alveoli and in through those of the capillaries that surrounded them. At the same time, there is a net movement of carbon dioxide in the opposite direction. Transporting facility is provided by the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. The gas exchange between the blood and tissues is very similar to that in the lungs, except that the gases go in the opposite direction. Carbon dioxide from the tissues go into the blood and oxygen from the blood into the tissue fluid and from there into the cells. Now, how we can learn about controlling respiration. Normally, breathing is an unconscious act. It can also be controlled consciously or voluntarily to some extent. One can breathe rapidly or slowly, deeply or shallowly at will. One can even stop breathing entirely for a time being. But most of the time, respiration is under automatic control by special centers in the central nervous system. The average adult at rest and not emotionally excited breathes about 15 to 20 times a minute. Emotional stimulation, pain, temperature, carbon dioxide level, and age cause variations from this basic level. However, we can train ourselves to breathe more slowly and more deeply, though without pause between inspiration and expiration. The rate can be easily reduced by 4 to 5 breaths a minute. It means 25% to 33%. Slower rate results in reduction of wear and tear in the entire body, less work for the heart, lower blood pressure, and quieter nerves. Now, what is the scientific complete breathing? The difference between bed breathing and scientifically complete breathing lies mostly in the method and its practice. Because one is perpetually under stress and tension, breathing is usually incomplete, hasty, superficial, and sometimes even gasping. Logically, therefore, proper breathing depends firstly on removal of tension. Hard abdominal muscles encumber every breath. Immobilized diaphragm and inflexible rib cage hinders the entry of air into the lungs more efficiently than a tight belt or a corset. First step, therefore, is to remove the internal girdle by relaxing these muscles. After relaxing, we have to pay attention on exhalation. Scientific breathing begins with a slow, calm, and complete exhalation. Contraction of the abdominal muscles help to evacuate the lungs by raising the diaphragm. More complete the evacuation, greater the volume of fresh air to enter the lungs, and purer the air in contact with alveolar surfaces. Unless we first breathe out fully, it is impossible to breathe in correctly. And therefore, we have to practice perception of long breathing. After exhalation, we have to focus on inhalation. Having emptied the lungs, the next step is to fill it up to the maximum extent. The total volume of air which the lungs are able to contain is known as the vital capacity, which is about 6 liters. Before one can contemplate to increase this capacity, full use must be made of what is already available. Now we would see that how we can be benefited by this particular scientific breathing. So benefits of complete breathing is dependent on our all methods, correct or right methods. Adequate supply of oxygen is essential for the proper functioning and vitality of the cells. It is therefore vitally important to breathe correctly so that every cell can receive oxygen. The optimum interchange of gases in the lungs occurs when the breathing is deep, complete, and slow. According to physiologists, it is necessary for the breathed in air to remain in the alveoli for 10 to 20 seconds in order to achieve maximum interchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Apart from this basic necessity, it is also essential that the lungs themselves are properly ventilated by proper breathing. The dark, warm, humid, and badly ventilated lungs is an ideal breeding ground for minute but dangerous germs. An important correlation between correct breathing and circulation is the so-called suction effect. Deep, slow breathing enables the lungs to literally suck up the excess blood accumulated in organs like liver. Proper rhythmic motions of the diaphragm and rib cage have the effect of improving the venous circulation throughout the organism. Thus, the proper interaction of the two driving forces of heart and lungs can optimize circulation of blood. Finally, every organic or functional disorder is amenable to the influence, if not always the cure, of controlled and conscious breathing. Even when it is not enough to cure infectious disease, it supports the struggle which rids us of them and provides the body with ways of avoiding them. To breathe is to live is undoubtedly a good age, but to breathe correctly, that is slowly, silently, and deeply, is to live long and keep healthy. Once the technique of complete breathing is learned, it can be practiced anywhere and at any time. In fact, it could and should become the habit rather than an exercise. So we should see that how we can continue this practice of perception of breathing at regular basis and for a longer period. So after this discussion of the scientific base of perception of breathing, now we would see how many benefits we can get out of this practice. And for that we have to learn all the benefits and see how we can get all those benefits by our regular practice of perception of breathing. There are several benefits of practice of perception of breathing. Few of them are mental happiness, concentration, operational efficiency, alertness, equanimity, purity of perception, and energy generation. Let us take some detail about all these benefits. First of all, mental happiness. Numerous benefits accrue from the practice of praksha meditation or any kind of other meditations. Some benefits pertain to the internal functions and some to the external ones. Some are physical and some are mental. One of the immediate benefits is mental happiness. As one becomes more accomplished, mental happiness increases. The feeling is not of joy or pleasure but of happiness. There is much difference between the two. Wherever there is joy, there is bound to be sorrow. They are inseparable. What one achieves as a benefit is happiness and not joy. The second benefit and the third benefit are concentration and operational efficiency. Perception of breathing is an important aid for mental concentration. Besides, it improves circulation, stimulates generation of energy, improves conductivity, and in general assists the nervous system in its proper functioning. All this collectively result in the control of emotions and patience as well as concentration. Concentration is an important factor in the daily working and professional field. Our operational efficiency depends on mental concentration. Be he a doctor, advocate, professor, or administrator, be he or she a managing director of a large concern or a simple housewife engaged in the domestic work, for good results, everyone has to concentrate on his or her respective work. When one has not learned to concentrate one's mind in the work in hand or concentrate fully on the present moment, one's operational efficiency would be very low. There would be hardly 20% production and 80% losses. But when he learns to concentrate by training his mental equipment to engage only in the work in hand, the production will be 80% and losses hardly 20%. the ratio would be completely reversed. The exercise of perception of breathing is an easy to learn and efficient tool to increase mental concentration and thereby enhance operational efficiency. The practitioner of this exercise trains his mind to concentrate fully on the present activity. Mental concentration means giving total attention to the work in hand. It means without distraction by memory of the past or planning for the future. Perception of breathing is neither a memory of the past nor an imagination of the future, but a reality of the present moment. It is neither imagination nor a mere appearance, it is true and real. And so the exercise of perception of breathing is a tool for concentration on the present moment of living in the present. Perception of breathing is strictly an event of the present moment, neither of the past nor of the future, because one is aware of the breath at the time instant as it happens, neither before nor after. This is exactly what is meant by living in the present moment. Be fully aware of the present moment. In business and profession, mental concentration means focusing full attention to the work of moment, leaving aside all other work for the time being. To form the habit of focusing full attention is an excellent means of increasing operational efficiency. Large industrial, commercial, and business concerns spend thousands of rupees in training their top managers to increase their operational efficiency. The training institutions generally conduct such training programs through seminars and symposia, but the basic factor for the development of efficiency is mental concentration, and this can be achieved by the exercise of perception of breathing, which is very simple and in our head. The fourth benefit we get from practice of meditations or perception of breathing is alertness. Perception of breathing is an unfailing tool for increasing mental alertness. As stated, the technique lays down that one should be fully aware of each and every inhalation as well as exhalation. Obviously, this is possible only if the mind is alert and wakeful. Otherwise, the respiration will be mechanical and not consciously controlled. If we use the analogy of a watchman, a sleepy watchman serves no purpose at all, as when he sleeps, anybody can go in and get out. Regular practice of controlled conscious breathing and its perception increases the alertness of mind. Then not a single breath can escape its attention, and there will be total awareness. When breath and mind are joined together, they must travel together, remain together. If one of the two companions goes to sleep, the company would be broken. Granted that normally it is not easy to limit the orbit of the wandering mind, the path of breath is very limited while that of the mind is extensive. Breath travels from the nostril to the lungs, a very small and narrow path. Mind can wander around the world. Indeed, it is difficult to couple such divergent partners. A giant with the speed of lightning and a dwarf which moves around at a snail's speed, but it can be done. Thus, it is simple and positive technique for awakening the mind and keeping it alert. Our purpose is to keep the mind fully awake and alert. The practice of perception of breathing is a powerful means of achieving this purpose. Once the mind has been fully awakened, its restlessness and wandering vanishes and it becomes vigilant and disciplined. So there is need to practice perception of breathing at regular basis and steadily, so that we can achieve this state of our mind, which is alertness. The next benefit which we get by perception of breathing is equanimity. When we are fully aware of the present moment alone, emotional like and dislike disappear. In the absence of memory or imagination, there is neither attachment nor aversion. Freedom from the memory and imagination is also freedom from attachment and aversion. Awareness of the present moment is thus realization of pure consciousness and perception, which is pure and unadulterated, that is uncontaminated by the emotional impurity of like and dislike. That is the moment of present, pure and uncorrupted. We can see from our discussion that conscious breathing leads to equanimity. Perception of breath is perception of the present moment, which means resting and relaxing the mind by removing mental tension. Regular practice of perception of breathing is a sure remedy for tension. The benefit which we get out of this practice of perception is purity of perception too. Perception of breathing is also an efficient tool for purifying the perception itself. Pure consciousness is characterized by the faculties of intuition and perception, or rather pure knowledge and pure perception. Our sensory outposts send thousands of messages to our conscious mind every moment. Some of these are perceived while many others are ignored. The process by which the mind converts raw sensation into perception is complicated. Perception varies by an infinity of factors, and the state of emotion, in particular, has a profound and at times decisive effect. Thus, when the intensity of emotions is low or nil, perception will be pure. But when the emotions are strong, perception is contaminated and colored. When this happens, mental activity is diverted from perception to conceptual thinking, and the mind begins to wander into the labyrinths of logic and inference. A priori logic is not accepted as an infallible instrument for realization of truth. Realization of truth needs application of pure consciousness, which is concomitant with pure perceptual cognition. Perception of breathing is the first step in this direction. Progress in right direction follows till one reaches the goal. Perception of breathing is the step in the right direction of realization of truth. In other words, we can say that perception of breathing is the process of pure perceptual cognition, where conception vanishes and perception reigns supreme. The mind cannot be engaged in both conception and perception at the same time. Thus, as soon as the concentration of perception begins, conceptual activity recedes and the mind ultimately studies itself in perception only. Perception of breathing is therefore an instrument of developing the basic qualities of consciousness. Normally, when we are engaged in perception through our sense organs, emotional likes and dislikes are concomitant with it. Mental attachment or aversion towards the object of perception follows. For instance, as soon as we smell something, a mental analysis of the smell into good smell or bad smell also occurs, followed by likes or dislikes. Pure perceptual cognition is one in which smell is just a smell without the element of likes or dislikes. attached to it. In the practice of perception of breathing, the conscious mind is fully coupled with breath, that is, there is full awareness of each breath. Awareness of breath does not need any thinking, and in fact, the mind is not engaged in thought but fully engaged in perception of breath. Thus, it is a practice of pure perception. Besides, it also develops the concentration of mind. Now, last but not the least, benefit which we get from perception of breathing is energy generation. When we practice perception of long breathing, our breathing is complete and scientific, which means that we are tapping the primary sources of bioenergy. Perception of breath might appear insignificant, but it should not be undervalued. It is like pushing the thin end of the wedge to achieve wider benefit. The fact is that we are not tapping a part of the energy source but the whole of it. As our breathing becomes more and more complete, we produce more vital energy, and its perception leads us to its origin. Activizing this primary source enables us to obtain unlimited energy. Thus, perception of breathing is a very important means of achieving new and higher stages of consciousness. There is one practice of breathing which is known as rhythmic breathing, and by rhythmic breathing also we can get it is also a valuable instrument of developing energy. Psychologists have discovered that higher levels of consciousness can be achieved by perception of rhythmic breathing. Extrasensory perceptions such as clairvoyance can be developed by regular practice of rhythmic breathing. Many other parapsychological achievements are also possible by its practice. So, in this session, we have understood all the scientific explanations or reasons why we should practice this perception of breathing, and after that we have also seen that what kinds of benefits we are getting out of this particular practice. So now it is very much needed that how we can start practicing perception of breathing at regular basis and for a longer period. Then only we can get all these benefits, and the breathing process should be very correct. It should not be hasty. It should be very silent and very slow, so that we can get more and more oxygen in and can release more and more carbon dioxide, and thereby we can refresh our blood and all body systems and can get more and more energy to work efficiently in our field. And also we can go into deeper meditation to explore our own inner mystical or mysterious powers. With this, I would conclude my talk, and now the floor is open for our discussion or question answers. After question answer sessions, we would take a practical session, or we would practice this particular meditation, which is perception of breathing, for 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you very much for your patience, and if you have any question, you are welcome.